Most of us think worship requires the right vibe, the perfect lights, a moving song, or a peaceful room. But the most powerful worship songs in history weren't written in a studio. They were written in a hole. While the Apostle Paul was chained to a Roman soldier, facing execution, he was soaked in joy. Meanwhile, we sit in climate-controlled churches feeling nothing. Why? Because we've traded relationship for ritual. Today, we're identifying the stages of empty worship. If you feel like you're just going through the motions, you're likely stuck in one of them. Let's find the way out. 1. The sound of a hollow heart. We begin at the entrance of the labyrinth, stage 1, also known as the ritual. On the surface, everything looks correct. You arrived on time. You stood when the music started, and you even raised a hand during the bridge. To an outsider, you look like a devoted worshiper. But inside, there is a profound silence. This is the performance of the script. It happens when the language of faith becomes more familiar than the person of faith. You know the Christian posture for prayer, and you know how to navigate a Sunday morning without actually engaging your heart. Contrast this with Paul in Rome, AD 60. Rome was a machine designed to produce silence. By chaining Paul to a soldier, they were saying, "Your movement ends here." If worship was about vibes, Paul should have been silent. Yet, he writes about God's plan stretching back before the foundation of the world. His worship wasn't a script, it was a reality. He wasn't performing for an audience. He was responding to a God who was present in the room despite the chains. Stage 1 is dangerous because it is comfortable. It allows you to keep the social benefits of faith without the personal cost of intimacy. You are mimicking the sounds of life, but the heartbeat is missing. The rituals were meant to be a trellis for the vine of your relationship to grow on, but you've kept the trellis and let the vine die. 2. The weight of being good. When stage 1 fails, we move to stage 2. The burden. We realize our worship is empty, so we try to fill it with our own effort. We think the problem is that we aren't doing enough. We add more rules, more journals, more masks. We believe that if we act holy enough, the feeling of God's presence will return. Worship stops being an overflow of love and starts being a desperate attempt to gain approval. You aren't singing to God anymore. You are singing at your own inadequacy. This is worship as a weight, not a wing. Paul lived in constant view of the ultimate symbol of effort, the Roman legionary. But as Paul watched his guard strap on a heavy breastplate, he didn't see someone to envy. He saw a metaphor for a different kind of strength. When he wrote about the armor of God, he wasn't telling us to work harder. He was realizing these were things God provides. In stage 2, your relationship becomes a transaction. You think, if I do X, then God will be close. But Paul didn't have the freedom to do anything. He couldn't even walk across the street. All he could do was be with Christ. If your worship feels like a heavy backpack, you've forgotten that the armor of God is meant to protect you, not to crush you. 3. The cold walls of apathy. Welcome to stage 3, the cynic. This is the most painful stage because it often feels like maturity. You've concluded that the whole thing is a charade. Worship is no longer empty. It's annoying. You critique the lyrics for theological precision just so you don't have to feel the emotion of the song. You look at others who are moved and assume they are faking it. The fire hasn't just gone out. You've poured water on the coals. Now, look at the Apostle John. Old, white-haired, and exiled to the volcanic rocks of Patmos. Rome had canceled him by dropping him on a rock in the middle of the sea. If anyone had earned the right to be a cynic, it was John. But instead of bitterness, John looks up. In his isolation, he sees the most vibrant vision in the Bible, the book of Revelation. He didn't let his circumstances dictate the content of his heart. The cynic's worship is empty because it is guarded. You've decided that if you don't expect anything from God, he can't disappoint you. But you've locked yourself in a prison worse than Paul's. Paul was in chains, but his spirit was free. The cynic is free, but their spirit is in chains. To move past this, you have to allow yourself to be unreasonable again. 4. Shifting the center. Why are these stages so prevalent? Because we have made ourselves the center of the universe. In modern culture, we are the emperors of our own lives. We evaluate worship like a restaurant. Was the service good? Did the message meet my needs? When the self is the center, worship is a consumer product. And like any product, once the novelty wears off, it feels empty. Paul, writing to the Colossians, had a different view. He wrote, "He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." Paul understood that all things included the atoms of the chain on his wrist and the air in the soldier's lungs. To Paul, Rome wasn't the center. Caesar wasn't the center. Even Paul's suffering wasn't the center. Christ was. Escaping empty worship requires a Copernican revolution of the soul. You have to realize that the universe does not revolve around your feelings. Worship is the act of stepping off your own throne. When you realize that Christ holds your atoms together, you stop worrying about whether the band played your favorite song. You aren't there to get something. You are there to recognize someone. This is where the emptiness begins to fill not with a feeling, but with a fact. 5. The liturgy of the ordinary. The final stage of moving to full worship is integrating the cosmic with the kitchen table. One reason our worship feels empty is that we've separated it from our actual lives. We have sacred time on Sunday and secular time the rest of the week. But if your theology doesn't change how you handle a sink full of dishes, it's not theology, it's just a hobby. Paul's range was incredible. He could talk about the Godhead in one sentence and forgiving one another in the next. To him, there was no gap. The same Christ who sustains the universe is the one who empowers you to be kind to the person who annoyed you at breakfast. Worship, for Paul, wasn't just a song, it was a walk. Empty worship ends when you realize that your mission field is the room you are currently standing in. When you stop looking for a mountaintop experience and start looking for Christ in the valley of the mundane, the emptiness vanishes. Every act of patience becomes a liturgy. You are no longer performing a ritual, you are living a relationship. 6. The secret of the runaway. We conclude with Onesimus, a runaway slave, a man who had stolen and fled to the shadows of Rome. He is the ultimate picture of empty. He had no standing, no hope, and was one mistake away from death. Many of us feel like Onesimus. We feel like our lives are too messy for worship, or that we've run too far. But Paul didn't see a criminal. He saw a dear brother. In that prison cell, worship wasn't about a choir. It was about two broken men finding Christ together. Paul shows us that God wastes nothing. The prison, the runaway, the stolen money, God used it all. Paul's worship was so full that it had room for a fugitive. The way out of empty worship is to stop running. It's to realize that God isn't looking for a professional worshiper. He's looking for a brother or sister who is willing to be found. Whether you are in a literal prison, a prison of routine, or a prison of your own mistakes, the message is the same. The one who holds the universe holds you. Worship is simply the moment you stop running and let him. God isn't looking for a perfect performance. He's looking for you. Stop looking for a vibe and start looking for a person.